All right, so it's been a fun day and a half for all of us. You know, we're a bunch of engineers and technicians and giving presentations. We weren't hired to do this sort of thing, so we're grateful for your patience and understanding as we're getting through all this. It's a whole lot of information I bet you received over the last 2 days or day and a half. And I'm just going to go over a brief review, overview of some simple things, and just kind of hopefully tie it all together, why we do what we're doing here today. So hopefully by the end of this day and a half, you'll be able to answer, what is a water right? All right? A water right is the right to divert public water for a beneficial purpose. Right? Why do we have them? Should be able to answer that. Does anybody want to take, why do we have water rights?
Just to staff here, Utah is an arid state, and we need to make sure that everything's being put to beneficial use because of the depletion factor of the area.
Yeah. Okay, great. So she said, for those that couldn't hear, Utah's an arid state, and we need to make sure and use all the water that we have for a beneficial use. Right? There's not enough water to go around. There's a lot of confusion, especially if people are coming from the east over, right? They have riparian water right law. And we talked a little about that early on the first day, right? Riparian water right law, where you have, if there's water on your property, near your property, you have the right to use that water because they have plenty of water to go around in most areas of the east, right? But out here in the west, we don't have that situation. One thing I like to always help people understand, you heard about distribution today. We use every drop of water in the state. There are some areas like the Colorado River drainage, we're still sending a lot of water down to Nevada and California. Maybe don't use every drop on that system. But along the Wasatch Front, we already use every drop. We're already cutting by priority every single year. So if you want more use, you're going to have to give something else up. And so why do we have this water right system? Saw the picture of the farmers fighting, right, over the last couple days. It's to resolve those conflicts of this scarce resource we have that is so important, that benefits our society. It's to solve those conflicts because we have this scarce resource. So, because we need the water right system out here, you should be able to answer this, right? How and why do water rights vary? Anyone? You want to answer again?
Sure. I guess we could start with laws being passed. So they vary because of the dates that laws have been passed. Priority dates are involved in that as well.
Yeah.
I could go on.
That's good. Why don't you bring the mic over here to this gentleman here too? She said laws have changed over the years, so water rights might vary because of that.
I was going to say climate.
Okay. Different climate regions, it's for sure, right? We're going to have maybe different issues down in the southern part of the state where it's a lot more arid and dry versus maybe up in Cache Valley where there's more water. You know, different states have different. Every state has a different set of rules for water rights. Water is regulated by the states, not the federal government, and there's different arid climates. As farther east you get, the more riparian type laws, and you kind of transition as you go farther and farther west. I just can't imagine recently this last year I took a trip out east, and I was in Nauvoo where the pioneers started west. And I can't even imagine as they kept going farther and farther west what they were thinking is that the land got more arid. By the time you get to Wyoming, you can't even imagine what they were thinking and how they would survive in this climate. And when they finally stopped in Utah and thought, we got to keep going, But yeah, there's different climates, different laws that they've been set up. So there's a variety of different issues with water all over the state. And your water rights will vary because of that. Different local issues, different policies. So now, though, in Utah, there's some very overriding basic principles that we have, right? First, water is a public resource. It's been declared that from the very beginning of statehood, even before statehood. Brigham Young, when he first got here, one of the first things he said was, water is a public resource that we're going to have to share. You'll hear this over and over again. Water rights are limited by their beneficial use, what you're using them for. There's this idea, this premise that if you're not using them, we want to maximize that use so they're revocable if you don't use them, right? They can be lost so that we can maximize that beneficial use. So that on any given year, if someone decides not to use their water right, it goes down to the next appropriator to be able to use that water. That's very common. That beneficial use is a public use, right? It's for the economic benefit of everyone in the area. That we are not a riparian control state. And you cannot use water just because it goes through your property. And others, if they have the right to use that water, can gain access and easement to get to use that water. Those are defended in our state. Also, that it's the duty of the state and the water to not waste or injure the waters of the state, right? Either by water quality or just leaving that water to waste, right? We want to utilize the benefit, the economic benefit from using water in the state of Utah. And that last thing that we talked about, title yesterday, water rights are conveyable, right? Early on, people were applying for water rights and we're able to use that water. Then we've run out of water. Like I said, most areas of the state, there is no more water. So they are conveyable to others. All right, if you want to use water here, you have to retire something over here, and that can be conveyed from this use to another use, and they're transferable now. So, when you need a water right? Anytime you want to use a beneficial use of that water. Right? I don't know if we haven't answered this yet. How do you get a water right? Okay, so either by water users claim, say you're using it pre-statute, before the laws, and you've been using it ever since, or since then through an application. Either if it's an area to open to appropriate, you can apply for that water. There's very few places in the state that you can do that anymore. Else you apply for a change application. You buy someone else's water right, you change that use to yours, and you use it for your use, right? Right? How don't you get a water right? So that's obvious, right? You can't just go use it, right? Even if it's on your property or within your area, you can't use it. And then we'll send, if you do that, we'll send Kurt after you. You met Kurt today. He's a big gentleman. I wouldn't want him coming after me. Yeah, if you do use a water without a right to it, there are consequences for that. And they can be pretty bad. So a couple other little things that no one else has mentioned I wanted to cover just because there might be some things on your test, but I think it's confusing to a lot of people out there. It's very easy for me to understand what the Division of Water Rights does and how I'm different from other divisions of the state, but I don't think it's so clear for everyone else. So Division of Water Rights is led by the state engineer. He's the director of the division, many times also called the state engineer's office. The Division of Water Rights, I usually say, deals with quantity of water for the appropriation and use and distribution of the waters of the state, right? There's also another division, the Division of Water Resources. They, also in the Department of Natural Resources, they're more of the planning and the project development agency of the state. So if you need funds to do projects, they have the Board of Water Resources that would loan money out. So if you need money to do a project, you talk to the Division of Water Resources. Before you do your project, you better talk to the Division of Water Rights to make sure you have a water right to do that project, right? And then there's also the Department of Environmental Quality, which has some divisions in there that also regulate water use. The Division of Water Quality and the Division of Drinking Water. So they deal more with the water quality side of things, where we deal with the water quantity side of things. So they have a board as well over there. And if you're a public water supply system, you're probably very familiar with both of those divisions on the treatment of water and of supplying water to your public entities. So those are kind of the main state agencies that deal with water and what some of those differences are. So specifically, the state engineer, who's here today, right? Oh, he's still here. There he is. Leads the Division of Water Rights. Some of these things, some of these little information might be on the test. That's why I wanted to cover it. The state engineer is appointed to a 4-year term by the governor. He was just appointed, right? Just appointed. So the governor stuck with him for 4 years. There's actually a very, very important reason why that is. Because the state engineer is not meant to be a political position. So he cannot be removed from a position unless there's cause, like he's done something illegal. Not going to do anything illegal. No, he would never do anything like that, right? So because water rights can be a controversial issue, and we don't want it to make it a political issue. So he serves for 4 years, and it's a complex issue. So he is a licensed professional engineer that has to have knowledge of water issues and water laws and state water resources to make the decisions that he makes. Obviously, he can't look at every single application himself, although he looks at a lot of them. And so he has a staff that helps support him and serves under his guidance and direction, the Division of Water Rights. But he is ultimately responsible and signs every application that comes out of this office. Most every application that comes out of this office. Some of us sign in behalf in representing him. But he acts as that gatekeeper to provide order and certainty as this valuable resource that we're distributing can get moved from different uses throughout the state. I think Boyd talked about this a little bit yesterday. It's to help protect those investments that you're made. Right? That's why we have this process up front, that you know what you're going to get before you develop those projects. We follow the state laws. Most of our information is by statute. You learned about yesterday our decisions by the state engineer, because he's that appointed position. You don't request upper agency review of his decisions. If you don't like his decision, you don't write a letter to the governor. I mean, you could, actually. You could write a letter to the governor, and the governor might talk to Kent. I don't think so. He might. Sometimes he will. But the governor does not have any power to overturn the state engineer's decision. Right? If you want to overturn the state engineer's decision, your only option is to go, you can request reconsideration and have him relook at it, or go to district court and file for de novo review of his action in district court. You can't go to the department director. There's no board to review this. He's that role, and if you don't like that decision, you go to district court. So I want to make that clear as well. This is basically in one slide most of what we talked about yesterday, right? This is the process we follow for you to get a water right. Either be a change application, exchange application, new water right application. You have to file it with our office. We provide notice so that anyone that might be an affected party can protest that application. If that happens, we have a hearing. We talk about those things. And then we study it out and go over all that criteria that was talked about. All right? Do we have reason to believe that we should approve this application? If so, we approve it. If not, we deny it. Be it approved or denied, you can request reconsideration or de novo review in district court. If it was approved, you can then develop that project, that water, in the manner that you applied for. Once that's done, we give you time to do that. You have to submit proof. If you can't get it done in time, you can extend that. Else it'll lapse. But if you extend that or get that proof, then at some point you'll put that into use. You file a proof, and we would certificate that use, and now you have a vested water right to continue to use in perpetuity forever until someone else with deeper pockets comes and decides to buy that water right from you to use for their use, right? And that's what's happening along a lot of places in the state. More and more water is being moved from agriculture to municipal use and industrial use and whatnot. But that is the simple process that you go through, but can take time to go through each one of those steps. We talked a lot about water rights statutes. Most everything we do is by statute. And then there's rules. We have some rules that we go through. And then there is another item that we didn't talk much about, but groundwater management plans, which are set up a process we go through in statute to help define how we will appropriate and use our groundwater resources of the state. Once a groundwater management plan is adopted, it is what's the word? It is not similar. It is statute as part of that plan until it's modified or challenged. We showed all these water right policies. And I don't know if this was very clear. A water right policy is just how the state engineer will act in a given area based upon the statutes that we have. So it's not statute that we will deny or approve, but a policy in an area might be, we feel in this area we've already over appropriated it, and there's a statute that says we won't approve water rights in an over appropriated basin. So our policy here in this area to comply with that statute is we won't act on any more applications. So you can still file for anything in any area, but our policies help give guidance and directions on how we interpret the statutes in those given geographical areas. Okay? Yeah, and our water right areas and all of these policy areas are all defined based on mostly hydrologic boundaries, drainage boundaries, and whatnot. Couple more things, and then I'll be done here. We talked a lot about duty and depletion. All right? Duty is the maximum reasonable diversion amount that you will need for your given beneficial use. Depletion is how much of that diversion will actually be consumed by that use. So we talk about irrigation, right? Generally, it's about 50%. What you're going to divert maximum, say you're flood irrigating alfalfa, you're going to divert 4 acre-feet per acre out of the canal down onto the field. If you do it that way, only about 50% of that will be depleted. Okay, will be actually evaporated or used by the crop. The rest will seep into the ground, return over the field, into the canal, back into the stream, and whatnot. So with domestic or municipal, right? My home, I use very little, actually consume very little water. Most of it goes through my shower, down the drain, and back into the system, right? Or through the sink. The indoor uses I'm talking about. So the duty is pretty high for municipal use. You divert a lot to get through the system, but the depletion normally is very low. And it really depends upon the treatment of that water. If your city has evaporative treatment like ponds, then it would deplete 100% of that water because as it's gone through the system, it evaporates it all away. If it has water treatment plants or whatnot, very small amounts of that water will actually be depleted. It'll be returned back to the system in the streams or whatnot. So as we're dealing with water rights, we need to make sure and understand both the duty and the depletion. And as changes happen, we make sure that we don't exceed the duty and the depletion for your water rights as you change them from one use to another. Those are key critical things as we're moving forward. Duty is very important as we approved all these water rights and we're distributing them to all the users. Depletion is becoming more and more important as these water rights are now changing from irrigation to other uses. Because if we don't look at that depletion and we allow someone to take their full duty and deplete it now, someone else down the system would get impaired. Right? Once again, you got to remember, every drop is being used in the state. So if you increase just any little bit of depletion, you're going to be impairing someone else downstream. We all live downstream from someone here, right? Even around the Great Salt Lake, most of the water use around the Great Salt Lake is for duck clubs and whatnot, and they rely on that water to get there for their beneficial use for those duck clubs. So any more increase in depletion could affect someone else. Let's see. I think I already answered this. Where do water rights come from? Applications, pre-statutory use, their decrees. There is something we haven't talked at all about. There are federal reservations for water rights, and I don't think we need to go into it. There's nothing like that on your test, but there is this other branch of very small things that federal reservations of land come with state-based water rights based on case law for Indian reservations, national parks, and whatnot. But for your understanding, you get a water right either from by application or pre-statutory use. With that, I think we're going to close. We have time if we want to have any follow-up questions. There was a correction that someone noted. It's not pertinent to the test, but I thought it was interesting. It was brought up in Ross's presentation earlier today. He talked about if a municipality obtains a water right prior to May 5th, 2008, you don't have to get an approved change application for that water right to be protected from forfeiture. If you get it after that date, you do. So in the slide, it actually said May 2nd. So if you had one May 3rd or 4th, we don't want you to understand that's not protected. It has to be before May 5th, right? So if you got one May 4th, you're okay. But it is May 5th, 2008, so that's a small correction. But I don't think you need to know that for the test. Are there any other questions that we might have? Wait for the microphone. And I've got the experts over here as well, if it's above my understanding.
This is probably simple. So I think we mentioned yesterday, just briefly, rainwater harvesting. Registering with the state and all that. My question was more on when rain falls on your parcel, does it fall under water rights at that point when it's pooling on your property, having fallen from rain? Or, do you have to have water rights to actually beneficially use that water?
Okay, good question. If you're going to beneficially use water, you need a water right. There is that small issue with rainwater harvesting. There is an exemption. If you want to, if there's harvest rainwater on your parcel under a certain amount, I don't remember what those amounts are, but it's pretty small, you can use water beneficially on that parcel that it was harvested on if you register with the state for a small amount of water. But anything above that or on a different parcel, you would need a water right to use beneficially. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? I thought you guys were able to ask a lot of questions throughout, so I didn't think there would be many. But thank you for your participation. We do this so that we can hopefully get this information out and get people trained, help us do this job, and because we truly do care about the resource of the state and water and the proper administration of it, and It's just such a valuable thing for us to have you guys here. So thank you very much. And I believe we'll turn the time over to Vern, and we'll talk about the tests, because we don't get involved in that. We do have a break here for 10 minutes. And then you want to explain the test after that? I assume while we're having a break, you can get your laptops out or whatever tablets. I think they have some laptops. And we've got some power strips around and things like that to help with that. But we'll just conclude with that.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, let's give James a round of applause for his presentation there. And thank you to the rest of the water rights staff who've so kindly presented all these topics and helped us to hopefully understand this topic a little bit better. As James said, let's start the test right at 2 o'clock. So we'll use this next 15 minutes.